Welcome back to the Communication Mastery podcast with me, Mark Burlinson. This is where we unleash the power of understanding to build bridges and not boxes, because we understand that communication is the oxygen of teamwork. We all need communication to thrive in life and work. And in this podcast, we want to increase your communication mastery so that we can all learn to adapt to one another and be effective in our communication. So thanks for being here. Let's learn together. Hi there. This week I want to start out with a little example from my own life. When I first started communication coaching, I thought that my main task was going to be to help people to understand and internalize these 7 key communication styles that we talk about so often on the podcast. But actually, I found that there's 2 other challenges that have to be addressed as an even higher priority than that. The first is that understanding that we speak all 7 communication styles. So helping folks to see that they're not just one style. They're not just programmed to operate in the same way all the time. And then the second thing that's a higher priority than simply understanding the styles is learning to adapt. What I want to call this week's episode is Adapt or Fail, because I need to learn the skills of being able to adapt to another person as quickly as possible and as effectively as possible. Otherwise, I'm not going to succeed in my communication. Whatever communication it is, whether it's a customer service conversation or it's a sales pitch, or I'm simply trying to communicate with somebody significant in my life, I'm not going to succeed unless I've learned to adapt to how they need me to say what I want to say. And so that ability to adapt without pushing myself into distress, I've learned is probably the most challenging area, but it's also the greatest indicator of communication mastery for an individual or for a leader or even for a whole organization. The different groups that I work with, the different businesses, the different nonprofits, the ones who grasp the idea of being able to adapt and learning the skills of adaptation, those are the ones that are most successful at communicating effectively and grasping communication mastery. I was having a discussion with a sales professional the other week about how to identify a person's preferred style. Because in making a sale or following a lead, you want to be able to convey your pitch in a way that the person can best receive it. And so if I'm coming in with facts, but the person's much more about feelings, that's going to cause a disconnect. Or maybe this is a person who's very much wired for action and they want to get to the point. But there are 2 different ways of getting to the point. The one is to focus on what needs to be changed and what are we going to do about it, that very courageous action focus. And the other is much more practical. Well, how are we going to do this? And when are we going to do that? And those 2 action focuses are very different in the way they receive information. And so this particular sales professional was saying, yeah, I had a client the other day who really wanted to know every single step. And it really took everything in me to be able to show them the progression and the time scale of what it was we were trying to offer them and sell them. And he said, if I'd understood what we're talking about now, it would have been a much easier conversation. So it really took us back to adaptation. American business wastes billions of dollars every year on miscommunication. If you're ready to change that trend, invest in communication IQ today, because it will give you a great return in terms of employee alignment, retention, customer engagement, profitability, sales outcomes. All of those areas will grow as you understand the science of communication. So go to my website at markburlinson.com, click on the business button, and let's have an introductory chat today about how I can help your business be more productive by enhancing communication. I was in a networking meeting the other week as well. This was last week. And I was talking to a service company owner. He's got folks who do home services, different things. They come in if you've got an emergency, that kind of thing. And he said the challenge he has is training his workers who are very skilled at what they do, training them to be able to adapt to the different clients they encounter as they come through the front door. They've got their procedures like put the little booties on or wipe your feet or those kinds of things that are built into their training, but that doesn't necessarily help their service teams, their service staff, to be able to adapt to the need of the client in a way that leaves the client feeling 100% satisfied. He was giving me the example of a client who'd had, I think, a plumbing issue, and in this case it was a success because the service rep who went in understood that this particular I think it was a gentleman, was very emotive about this issue, and he was able to dial up his emotions and to connect with that emotive, show that he cared, that he wasn't just going to fix the problem, but he cared about the feelings the man was experiencing because of the problem. And the client gave them a 5-star review. And so these kinds of adaptations are really important for us to be successful in our communication. Every great marriage is built on connection. Can you imagine what it would be like if you had a marriage where every conversation brings you closer together rather than further apart? A marriage where what you say is actually understood and not misrepresented. It is possible to have a marriage like that. And if you'd like that, I invite you to go to my website and click on Communication IQ for Couples. Let's make a start today on your marriage embracing communication mastery. And recently I've been training several groups on a scientific approach to team meetings and trainings and bigger gatherings so that you ensure that as many people as possible can receive the message you're communicating, or they can contribute to the discussion that you're having without feeling left out or disregarded. And so this process requires an engagement with each of the 7 communication styles in turn, so that you don't leave anybody out, that everybody's preferred communication style gets included, but in an order that doesn't inadvertently exclude some before you get to them. And I think this skill is going to become increasingly important in the 21st century, because social media is diminishing our ability to communicate effectively. It's all about just broadcasting what I'm doing and hoping that you'll pick up on it. There isn't the two-way street of effective communication. And then, of course, AI is coming into the picture in such a strong way. And then you get this kind of computer generated best case scenario that actually turns everything into what the language model thinks is best, rather than what's best for the person or the situation or the individual. And so these skills of learning to adapt and learning to include every communication style are really becoming vital. Let me give you a brief outline of how it works. We don't have time to look at the whole of it, but basically you start with the emotive styles because you want to connect on a personal level with your audience, whether it's an audience of half a dozen in a team meeting or an audience of hundreds in a big conference. So when you're connecting on a personal level, you want to beware of slipping into any kind of complaining or criticizing at the start of your message, because those are the kinds of ways of expressing myself that cause distress on an emotive level. And I don't want to cause distress. I want to rephrase what I need to say. Even if I've got something negative to say, I want to be able to rephrase it in a caring, encouraging way so that I can make an emotive connection with those feelers in the audience. Here's an interesting fact about the languages. The responder language is probably the most passionate of the 7 languages. And when the responder language is on board, it'll be the most committed to whatever message is being received because it cares about that message. But if the responder language feels excluded, it's very resistant to change of the status quo, and therefore will be the biggest obstacle to achieving what I want to achieve in a message. So starting with the emotive styles can be very valuable, particularly because there's a good probably 50% of the population would prefer the emotive style as their starting point Doesn't mean they stay there, but that's the starting point. And when we acknowledge that starting point, then we're bringing people with us to the next stage, which is then to move into a more professional, more cognitive style, and begin to discuss maybe strategy or resource management, or maybe the in-depth insights that come from a deeper reflection. All of those more cognitive, brain-based approaches really help us then to dig deeper into whatever topic we're discussing or into the message that we want to convey. Again, depending on the message, you may want to focus on strategy and use the shaper language to do that. We want to get from here to there, and these are the steps we want to take. Or maybe it's more to do with making the most of what we have, and so it's a question of drawing out the resources that may be hidden in plain sight. Or in some cases, it's a question of digging deep and finding an insight that hasn't been found before with the contemplator language, so that there's a key to the progress we want to make or the change we're going to bring in, that others can understand on a deeper level. And then, having done that professional cognitive approach, then we move into the practical steps that we take as we move into action, and then finishing with the courage and the discernment to face obstacles, or to overcome challenges, so that we get to where we want to go. And that would be the doer language with the practical steps, and then the mover language with the courage. So every language gets included, but in an order that doesn't leave anybody out. And this is so vital for us to be able to be effective in our communication. So if that process would be helpful to you in reducing misunderstandings with your team, why don't you go to my website, click on the schedule a 15-minute free call, and let's talk about this. Let's discuss it. I can help your team to connect and adapt and then thrive. And I'd love to see more of this kind of process of adapting to one another rather than failing and miscommunicating. It's what I exist for. So give me a chance to help you. Let me know what needs you have. You can use the text me a response link in the show notes to tell me what situations are you facing. Maybe we'll raise them in a future episode, or maybe we'll schedule a call to talk about it and see if I can help you overcome whatever challenge it is you face in adapting to the needs of others, so our communication mastery grows and our businesses thrive. We'll see you again next week. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. It would mean a lot to me if you'd rate and review the podcast so it helps more listeners to find us. But also, would you give me your feedback on things you'd like to hear about in future episodes? And remember to share the episode with a friend if you see something that would benefit them as well. You can reach me with feedback through my website at markburlinson.com. Just click on the contact button and send me a message. I respond to everyone personally, and I really want to hear from you. So thank you again for listening, sharing, reviewing, and giving me your feedback.